I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now, today we're at the pretty village of Martinstown, also known as Winterbourne St Martin in Dorset. It's about 3 or 4 miles to the southwest of Dorchester. And today we're going to be doing a roughly 4-mile circular route, starting and finishing in the village, and we'll be heading eastwards to explore the Iron Age fort known as Maiden Castle, and then we'll be coming back through some quite stunning countryside. Now, I'm filming at the end of September. It is another glorious sunny day. A few bits of cloud in the sky, but a fair bit of blue as well, and a little breeze which will keep us nice and cool. Perfect conditions for walking. So do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car at the village hall, and we'll start our walk with a little wander through the village, starting at the western end. So let's have a look at the pub which is behind me here. It's the Brewers Arms. And originally it was built as a girls' school in 1848 and converted to the village pub in 1865, with beer supplied from the brewery house opposite. And I see that there is a house opposite the pub called the Malsters Cottage. I wonder if that was it. Anyway, we're just going to wander up this lane here northwards. There's something very interesting I want to show you up here, and here it is. It's a sheep washing pool. Fascinating. There's a little information board in front of it, but basically each day in May in the olden days they used to wash sheep prior to shearing. That way they could get a higher price for clean fleeces. Apparently it was last used in the 1960s. Although these days it's used to start the annual plastic duck race that heads downstream towards the pub. But isn't that fascinating? Now, the village is actually in the UK weather record books for having the most amount of rain in a 24-hour period between 9 AM in the morning and 9 AM the following morning. And something like 11 inches fell on the 18th of July 1955. It had been a very hot summer, and the land was dry and the water just gushed and cascaded off the hills into the centre of the village. Now, the total record for 24 hours belongs to a village in Cumbria, I believe, when 13.5 inches fell, but that was between 6 PM and 6 PM the next day. I think that was in 2015. But anyway, the flooding here really, it covered the roads. I've seen some grainy pictures, and indeed I believe it took many days for the water to subside. Well, this little stream here flows through the village. It's the South Winterbourne. Its source is from springs at Winterbourne Abbas in the west, and it joins the River Frome in the east and flows into the sea at Wareham. It's fed by groundwater held in chalk, and it's called a Winterbourne. It can often dry up in the summer, but as you can see, we're now, okay, it's late September, but it's this little part of it is still in full flow. It really is a delightful little village, and in fact it's won a few best kept village competitions in the past. Now, the lordship of Winterbourne St Martin is still a registered title. However, on a number of occasions unscrupulous solicitors have tried to sell the title Barony of Winterbourne St Martin, which doesn't exist. Now, this rather alluring village green that's in front of the church, it was the site of the village fair that was granted by royal charter back in 1268, and it was held annually around November the 11th, which is St Martin's feast day. The last fair was held here in 1982. Speaking of the church, let's go and have a look at that. And this is St Martin's Church. Now the original building dates to the 12th century, but it was refashioned and rebuilt in the Perpendicular or English Gothic style when the tower was added in the 15th century. It was restored again in 1905 and a south porch added in 1907. Now I was reading that the 18th century bells were sold to defray debts, but after 100 years of silence, chimes rang out again in 1947 when 5 new bells were hung in memory of those that lost their lives in the Second World War. I believe there are 6 bells there now. Well, the last thing I want to have a look at before we head out into the countryside is this magnificent building here. It's called Rylstone, and it was the farmhouse for the Perkins farm. Now the present frontage is 18th century, but there is evidence of an earlier building, and it was named by an owner who originally came from Rylstone, which is a village in Yorkshire. And I believe the first meeting of the Martinstown Women's Institute took place here in 1948. Well, there were some gorgeous houses and cottages. It really was a very pleasant meander through the village, very peaceful. Anyway, we're going to start heading out into the countryside now, initially heading in a sort of north and then northeasterly direction along some fields. Well, I tell you what, it really is quite glorious. I shouldn't complain because we had quite a poor August weather-wise. So I'm continuing to head eastwards along a farm track that's actually was part of the National Cycle Route number 2, I believe. And I just passed a post with a sticker on that said Tour de Manche, which I believe is a 435-mile cycle route that links Devon and Dorset with Brittany and Normandy in France. I guess they must use the ferry at some stage, otherwise it could get a little damp. I'll just stop to look back at the views that we've just left. That's in the west, and we've followed this farm track away from Martinstown. And then just on the left here, this is Clandon Hill, and you can see there's a barrow on the top there, late Bronze Age barrow. Quite big, it's about 30 metres in diameter, 3 metres high, and it was excavated in 1882 when a number of gold objects were found, including the Clandon Barrow Gold Lozenge. I've just passed through Clandon Farm, one of many dairy farms in this part of Dorset, and it's the ideal location for dairy farming, with this vast open area of rich pasture land. And that's our first glimpse of Maiden Castle, the hill fort that we're going to be exploring shortly. And I love the way the shadows really do show the outline of some of those earthworks. This is on the northern side, and let's have a little look. This is now looking north. There's Dorchester behind those trees there, which of course the Romans established a garrison there after they'd defeated the Durotriges tribe. I think they called it what was it, Durnovaria, something like that. And then to the side of it, on the western side, is Poundbury, which of course is the experimental new town built on land owned by the Duchy of Cornwall and Prince Charles. I think construction started in 1993, and it's due to be completed, I think, around about 2025. And I think it's eventually going to have 5,000 or more residents. just before we go into the hill fort itself, I thought we'd look back and see where we've come from. It's been quite a nice steady climb up, not as steep as some hill forts that we've done recently, but we will probably get some even better views of Dorchester and Poundbury at the top, but I still think it's worth having a look. So that's the little path that we've come up the side of the hill, and it's easily see that large barrow here. And there is actually a car park here if you didn't want to do the first part of the walk and just wanted to go to Maiden Castle itself. Not too far to get up to the fort. And so we'll just have a look at this side, because this is the only time we'll see it on from this view, obviously on the northern side, but it gives you a real idea of the vastness of it, as I've probably already said before. We're now at the western entrance of the Maiden Castle hill fort. I'm going to have to keep Logan on a lead all the time here. There are some signs asking all dogs to be kept on leads across the whole site. Indeed, there are quite a few sheep around as well. So what I'll do is, as we'll explore, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of it as well, because it's a fascinating place. Well, we're still making our way through the western entrance, and some of these ditches are enormous. Now let me tell you a little bit about the area. I mean, before the fort was actually here, it was just an enclosure dating from about 4000 BC, and there were burial mounds on top, and it was used for crops. It wasn't a defensive structure then. Indeed, it became abandoned around about 1800 BC. Now, Maiden Castle itself, the fort, was built around about 600 BC, when it was a simple hill fort with just one rampart covering about 16 acres. And then around 450 BC, it was greatly extended and tripled in size to 47 acres, making it one of the largest in the UK. I think Hod Hill, also in Dorset, we've actually done a video walk there, I think that's slightly bigger at 54 acres. And the defences here were then made more complex with ramparts and ditches added. And then around 100 BC, habitation of the fort went into decline, with just the eastern side used. And it was occupied until the Romans came in AD 43, by which time it was in the territory of the Durotriges tribe. And then after the Roman conquest in the 1st century, it seems to have been abandoned, although the Romans may have used it, although of course they established Dorchester to the north. And in the late 4th century, a Roman temple was constructed, and we'll see the remains of that later on. But by the 6th century, it had totally been abandoned and only used for farming, and it's now run by English Heritage. Well, I know sometimes views don't always come across that well on a GoPro, but you'll have to take it from me. This is something special from here. Just another look north, down below Dorchester and Poundbury, and again just from the top of this rampart, look how deep that ditch is down there, and the contours as it makes its way around that corner there as we're heading towards the eastern end of the fort. Well, I mentioned earlier that there was a Roman temple built here on the eastern side of the fort back in the 4th century, and here there are the remains in front of me. And well, it was quite a substantial building. I have seen an artist's impression actually on the internet, but I think that was the main building there, and then there are a couple of other parts to it here. As I say, it's on the northern side of the eastern part, if you see what I mean, so it does look over Dorchester. We're now on the eastern side, and indeed this is the eastern entrance down below. There are a couple of information boards. I'll put photos up on screen. You can always freeze the screen and read them. One is about some of the excavations they've done here in the past, and the other one's about a war cemetery, I believe. And this is our last bit of fort footage of the walk before we start heading back. Some ways I think this looks even more impressive with the ditches. You can make them out, was it 1, 2, 3 ditches, I think? And in the very, very far distance on the brow of that hill, that's the Hardy Monument. And of course, we've done a walk there in the past. If you haven't seen that video, do check that one out. Well, we really are on the homeward leg now, just come off the fort, heading down this quite enchanting little valley, heading south, and then we'll head south-west back to the village. Just on my right is Hog Hill, and there's a barrow at the top of that. Indeed, I was reading there's something well over 100 barrows in the parish. It really is an area of ancient history. And the sun's come out again. Well, we're on our final footpath now. You can walk back into the village along this road here, but this little path here through a couple of fields is more scenic. A beautiful white thatched cottage we've just passed by. And I've also said, well, we're keeping our distance from this chap here, but he looks fairly friendly. And now back into the village. You can see why this is a rather pleasant way of approaching the village from the south. You've got the church tower peeping through the trees, and then just as I pan round, obviously that's the village. We can just make out Poundbury just on the brow of the hill, and then oh, I think that's the Clandon Barrow. Better view it from here actually, on the top of the hill. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We hope you enjoyed it. We thought we'd do our end scene here at the top of Maiden Castle with these terrific views. And one of us is already having a snooze. Please do give us a thumbs up or a like if you did enjoy the video, and do leave a comment. And do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. Well, when I can wake him up, we'll head back to the village and back to the Brewer's Arms for a well-earned pint. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio. I don't know, just can't get the staff.